Topic 2.6, continuing on with Unit 2, the interactions amongst the branches of government. Okay? And topic 2.6, we are talking about expansion of presidential power. Okay, so the roles of the president, the role of the president, and how it's kind of been expanded. We're going to look at one of the key required documents, right? The foundational required documents, Federalist Number 70, which argues for a single executive. We're going to be looking at the 22nd Amendment and other factors that have increased the power and the expansion of presidential power throughout history. So the learning objective for 2.6 is that students will explain how presidents have interpreted and justified their use of formal and informal powers. Okay, so the essential knowledge number one says that basically the justifications for a single executive are set forth in Federalist Number 70, right? So there was some debate about what the role of the president should look like. What should the position of the president be? Should it be a board? Should it be a committee? Should it be a few people, right? Because we feared that putting too much power in one person's hand was bound to result in a tyranny, right? We didn't want that. We're moving away from a tyranny. We're moving away from a king and King George and the King of England, right? So Federalist Number 70, basically the justification says that yes, we need one person. We need one person. We need energy in an executive, right? Energy in an executive leader, a president of the United States, and we need energy in that one person. Why? So he's not talking about energy about being excited, about being energetic. He's talking about the ability to make decisions, right? We need that energy in one person. That the main justification is if you give this to a group of three people, right, and you ask them to make a decision, there's oftentimes going to be discontent. People aren't going to agree on things, right? And in times when you need to make a swift decision, one person is better than three or four or five or a small group, right? So that is the main argument there, right? That if we're going to have a president of the United States, we're going to have somebody that's going to make decisions for the country, we need one person. We need one person to do this, energy and an executive. And also he talks about corruption, right? You fear a corrupt leader? Well, guess what? It's a lot easier to find a corrupt leader where there's only one of them, right? Versus a group of four or five. Who's the corrupt one? We don't know. So he kind of uses that point too, that if we're fearful of corruption, we can. It's much easier to find corruption in one person than it is a small group, and obviously much easier to make decisions too. The second piece of essential knowledge says that the term of office and constitutional power restrictions, including the passage of the 22nd Amendment, demonstrate changing presidential roles. Okay, so the term of office, we know that initially the president's term of office was 4 years. There were no term limits initially, right? Everybody served 2 terms. All presidents served 2 terms because that's what George Washington did, right? And then you have FDR and the New Deal and the Great Depression, right? FDR brings the country out of the Great Depression and is elected to 4 terms. He dies shortly into his 4th term. But shortly after his death, Congress proposes the 22nd Amendment, which is going to limit the president to 2 terms or 10 years, right? So if the vice president takes over and serves less than 2 years, he or she could be elected 2 more times. So 2 terms or 10 years at the most. Why? Basically, we didn't want a constitutional monarch. We did not want a constitutional president, right? Or a constitutional monarch that would be there for 12, 16, 20 years. That's not what the framers envisioned the role of the president. And, some people think that, hey, if a president's a good president, what's wrong with keeping them in office? And if they become bad, if they become tyrannical, the people can vote them out, right? So there is some debate on that, but the framers thought best that I'm sorry, not the framers, but Congress and the states thought best that we would then, after FDR's 4 terms, limit every future president to 2 terms in office. And then the last piece of essential knowledge says that the different perspectives on the presidential role, ranging from a limited to a more expansive interpretation and use of power, continue to be debated in the context of contemporary events. So we look at contemporary events, right? We look at 9/11. We look at what's going on right now, present time, the coronavirus, right? What is the role of the president? And oftentimes we find that in these contemporary events, the role of the president expands. Right? The president becomes more vocal. The president becomes a more decisive decision maker. It makes decisions and comes to these has to make quick decisions, right? It's all about this energy and this ability of the executive to make quick, swift decisions in times of need. And that's what Federalist Number 70 was arguing for, right? Some people have problems with vesting too much power in one person. That's not the job of the president. That's not the job of the that's not what we wanted from our country, and more so probably back in the maybe early 1900s, where we were still fearful of a tyranny, right? A tyrant, of a dictator. That's not one of our key foundational values in a democracy. But the role of the president has expanded. We looked at the power of the president to enter into executive orders and executive agreements, right? And his ability to make swift decisions. Again, a lot of that comes from Federalist Number 70. And his role, the president's role, his or her role as the executive leader. So we often look to the president in times of need and contemporary times. FDR, the New Deal, right? He implemented a lot of his programs to bring the country out of the New Deal. George Bush's reaction to 9/11, right? And right now we're living history. We're literally living history right now with Donald Trump and his response to the coronavirus. Okay, so so that is the topic 2.6, the expansion of presidential power. Hopefully that makes sense. And keep studying, keep working hard. Thanks for watching.